Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. My name is Aparna, and I am the founder of Moving Beyond, as well as the co-creator of Climate for DEI, which is a survey platform for small and mid-sized shops, and an opportunity for organizations to shift towards a data-informed approach to DE&I. Now, I know that some of you have probably joined us before for Data is Love, and there might be some new faces here today. So welcome. For those of you that are joining the very first time, this show is about exploring how to use data to create the most good in the world. And I'm super excited to have a guest with me today. Um, he's not American. He is, in fact, north of the border in Toronto, Canada, and has just like an incredible story of his own career and journey in data and what you're doing now. So welcome, Shannon Lynch. Tell us about you and tell us a little bit about how you got here to starting and creating Power BI Coach.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me as a guest here. Truly, deeply honored at the work that you do, and it's an esteemed honor to be here as well. So, hey, everybody, my name is Shannon Lynch, and just a little bit about me. It's quite an interesting story. I have a background in broadcasting of all things. Now, you think, how does this guy go from broadcasting to data? What is the connection there? And as a young guy in Toronto, I loved radio and I wanted to be a radio personality. And so I went in there. I got my certification and my degree within communications. However, I found it very difficult finding a job, and the bills needed to get paid. And so I started giving my resumes out and so on, and I got hired at a logistics firm. And it's there where I started to get introduced to data, working with data in different facets. And, really, I uncovered a skill that I did not know I have. Growing up, I was always not the greatest with math. And so I deterred going in anything that has numbers, hence why I went into broadcasting. But it just so happened that I had a real knack of seeing through the sea of data that was before me and being able to harness that to gain some insight, and then translating that into a story to drive actions for those who I was working for. And so really I stumbled upon this skill really just through my experiences and my love to investigate and harness information, and that's what led me to pursue what I do now full time as a Power BI trainer and coach and consultant.
Okay, I want to repeat something that you said. You said knack for seeing through the sea of data before me. That is incredible. As somebody who works in the DE&I space, I hear, like multiple times every week from practitioners who say, okay, but I'm not good at data. And I think that this is a testament to what does that mean? Like, what does it mean that you're not good at data? Because you went from broadcasting to working in one of the most robust data platforms in the world. Tell us what Power BI is for folks that are listening that don't know what it is.
Yeah, so Power BI is a Microsoft business intelligence solution. And really what it does is it helps you to sort, analyze, and to really harvest data from various sources to create these really robust data models where you can then visualize it and harness the insight for business decision making. So at the core of it, I like to look at it as taking all these various siloed channels of data and putting it together. So I'm almost like an artist. I kind of visualize it, and you're painting this really great story, this really great imagery for your end users to consume, and making it very digestible in terms of how that information is carried across. And so by using best practice techniques and visualizations, they're able, within a quick snapshot, whether you're showing this to executives making decisions or to operational teams, you're able to leverage this tool to really, again, gain those great business insights.
Yeah. And a business can also be a nonprofit organization, right?
Precisely,
Like,
precisely. So this goes for nonprofit, it goes for business, you name it, whatever. I've done so many, a lot of my clients, I've worked for, done a few non-for-profits in terms of surveying particular community-based data. So if we're looking at, I had one client that was looking for food banks within a certain region and looking at the demand there and how to, you know, go or initiate new or get new initiatives based on whatever demand was around the geographical area and what is required. So, you know, there's a lot of good that you can do with that data. And especially those projects for me are special because again, it has a more sustainable and long-lasting impact to society, right? Not just all the dollars and cents.
yeah. Yeah. And also the dollars and cents, right? Like you want to have programs where there is
Absolutely.
demand. You want to, push supply. The very first time I used Power BI was also for a non-for-profit organization, probably 10 years ago. And it was mapping um, donor information geographically and helping them see where their largest gifts were coming from. And for this organization, it was kind of like an aha moment. They were having like
Mhm.
fundraisers in parts of the country where their largest gifts were not coming from, based on assumptions. And
Right.
so, right. So, for whether your business is for profit or nonprofit, it can really help paint a great picture. When we're planning for this conversation, and I think even before that, you said something that I kind of highlighted in my notes, and you said like your path to becoming a Power BI coach and starting this company has been a joyous one. Um, and you want to bring other underrepresented folks into the space. And I'm just really curious, what does what does that mean to you, and why?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's for me, you know, why I ventured off into entrepreneurship because, you know, growing up in Toronto, especially when I found out that, you know, I do have a knack for data and for information, I started to pursue that. And you know, I had really good managers and people leaders who were able to kind of guide me and help me along the way. But the one thing that was quite evident was I was always the only person, um, you know, that was you know, was black within my teams. And while I never had any issues at all, the folks I worked with was great. But the concept of how I view the world was a challenge, right? In terms of how I view data, how I communicate that data. And so I found it difficult really relaying to a lot of folks just because I had a different view or lens on things based on my upbringing. Needless to say, I think that's what propelled me to go forward into entrepreneurship and to really be a bit of an ambassador in this space, in this area, to see if there are, because I know that there are other young men and women from other ethnic groups that would not necessarily have the exposure or know that they have this gift and talent. And to have some representation, somebody that looks like you to say, hey, there's another opportunity and another option here. And this is something that even within my own home, I train I teach my children to, you know, be open. And for example, my 10-year-old has now ventured into coding. And that's again something that I've allowed for them to see and experience, to say open up your horizon and see what you're really good at. And so that's the one thing for me, going through my career path and realizing that I was the only you know, person of my kind and not being able to really relate a lot. But that did not stop me. I continued to forge ahead, make connections, which ultimately led me to pursue entrepreneurship, to be that ambassador for those that are underrepresented, to be able to see that it can be done. And even if you don't have the skill or the background, but there is an avenue and there's an opportunity for you if you are willing to try.
Yeah, if you're willing to try. Also, I don't know what the labor laws are in Canada, but like, can a 10-year-old be working for you? I mean, is he doing some like mad pivot tables,
No,
working
no,
on
no.
client engagements?
No, he's into the video game space. So, he's designing a lot of video games and he's working with JavaScript and other things like that. So he's actually going to surpass his dad. So
That's incredible. I mean, that's incredible that he has that opportunity and that you're there to support him through this exploration. Um, One question that I have, right, and I think everybody thinks of this differently. In, for instance, like I think in the nonprofit space or the social, let's say the social impact space, we have a lot of conversations about lived experiences or proximity to community. That is a really important factor in making things successful, right? Like, are you from there? Do you know how it works? I'm curious, like, what is the value of Black and brown folks in a business environment, when it comes to data? What are you seeing? What are you seeing that your white peers, yes, they're probably amazing because I feel like nerds generally are like really good people. But what are you seeing that they might not be seeing, or what are you seeing that's different?
And that's fantastic. And just on the heels of that, I find I'm not sure about sort of south of the border, but in Canada, there's a lot. I'm seeing a rise of a lot of Black tech groups and communities starting to build, especially within the African Nigerian communities. That there's a heavy focus on Black tech, and we're seeing a lot of networking, which is great because it's now giving a lot of exposure even for job opportunities, right? And mentorship. I think mentorship is something that, for me, had I had mentorship earlier on, there's probably a few different paths I could have taken, or I would have, gotten to entrepreneurship a lot faster. But what I see is, again,
Mm,
having that representation from a mentorship perspective. That to me is critical. It's being able to do some knowledge sharing and pass on that knowledge, how to navigate various spaces within the work environment or nonprofit, right? What are some of the soft skills and hard skills that you need as a person of color, right? And I think that's the one thing that I would say, would be something to highlight, is having really good mentorship programs, those that have been there and done that, and passing that knowledge down to those that are aspiring to do that. And that's something that I want to be. I want to be that mentor to that next generation, to that young Black man or young Black woman who maybe has an interest, but they're not seeing, a representation in that space. And so being able to come alongside and say, no, we are also here. And here are some things that you can do to get exposure, to get experience, and to build a sustainable and enjoyable career path.
yeah, to build a sustainable career path, to have exposure. When we were chatting last week, you shared the story of me with somebody who tried to mentor you, right? And you kind of didn't pick up on his hints. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can share that with us today, and also what is your advice to somebody who finds themselves in that situation?
Sure. So yeah, it's an interesting story where I was working for, at the time, a large home improvement retailer, and I was probably the first analyst brought on to the organization as they were making this transition. um, I took a lot of their reports. They didn't really have many, and so I started to create a lot of reporting. And one department side, another one side, and everybody started sort of tap into to see what I can do to help them out. And then eventually they start to bring other analysts on. But I recall at one point I was working, and one of the large customers was doing sort of a walkthrough their regular check-ins. And he pops by my desk and he sees the reports I'm building. He starts to ask questions. Now, I was probably very, very young, my my early 20s at the time, and I was just nervous, right? Here's this high profile guy. And he comes over to me and he says to me, what you're doing here is great work. And he says, I have X amount of customers and they are willing to pay X amount of dollars for that. You do the math. And he hands me his business card. And I didn't know what to do with that. I was like petrified. I had just gotten married, and I'm like, what do I do with this, right? But needless to say, it was something that was the beginning of work to lead me to where I am right now. I was reluctant to act on that. To your point, somebody wanted to invest in me in that respect, but I allowed fear to kind of overstep. And because of that, it kept me 10 years, waiting there and continuing to improve. But that's what led me to entrepreneurship to where I am right now, to see that. And I kept getting a lot of these conversations where people would say, hey, you know what, you can help people in this way, you can help in that way. And I started to take those cues bit by bit, until an opportunity arose where I was able to step out and actually begin and launch my own consulting and training firm. So needless to say, everything happens in the right time. But I would say to anybody who's trying to aspire is, don't let fear block you. Fear is a big blocker. There's a lot of things within inside of us that we don't know. But if we're willing to take some risks, right, as the old saying goes, no risk, no reward. You have to go and dream. It's okay to dream. It's okay to try. And that's the one thing that I learned through this experience. And I'm now happy to say that it's been over 2 years where I've been independent, and it's been the most phenomenal experience. I'm meeting great people like you, and I'm learning so many different things. And I'm no longer just one dimensional, right? And it keeps me on my toes. So I would encourage anyone. Now, it's not for everyone, but I would just say this: chase your dreams. Watch those cues, use your gifts, strengthen your strengths, and I'm telling you, it will definitely make a change in how you perceive your career path.
Yeah, Shannon, as I'm listening to you talk, and this is, just something that's coming up for me in this moment, is also culture has a big role to play in when we feel like we're ready to take the leap, right? And can we even recognize when somebody is making a really sincere gesture
Right.
to help us on a, like, whether it's an entrepreneurial journey or even just a career growth journey, like how do we manage that when it's not something that's talked about in our homes, right? Or culturally, when the idea is like, don't stir things up, don't, right, like, things are what they are, go with the
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember when I told my parents, I'm going to be venturing out, and they almost had a heart attack, because again, it's not the norm in the Caribbean household, right? Like, we're hard workers, we go and we work. Entrepreneurship and venturing out on your own is not necessarily something that is prevalent, per se, right, for everyone. So for me, it was basically paying attention, right? Like, if you have a passion for something, and I always say your passion will always propel you, and you'll always see repeats no matter where you go. I can say that no matter what position I've held in my career, for whatever reason, I always seem to stem back to this very point here, where I'm analyzing data, where I'm taking information, and I'm trying to gain insight and work with people to improve those processes. It doesn't matter. It always comes back to that. So I would say pay attention to your strengths, and also pay attention to what others are saying. If you're seeing people saying, hey, you know what, you have a really good knack for this thing, and it's not just one random person, but you're seeing these patterns over time, it's a leading indicator that, hey, maybe this is something you can pursue. And that's what it was for me. It was that one conversation, but I had a couple, several other strings of those type of conversations, whether it was with my boss or my supervisor, or with friends, that saw these giftings and were able to say, hey, you have something here. So we have to pay attention to that as well. And you know what? Sometimes we have to be trailblazers. That's just I'm the first in my family of my kind, but that's okay, because now my children behind me are seeing something different, and that's something that I also want to encourage, is don't be afraid to be a trailblazer. Don't be afraid to be the one that sets the standards and blaze new trails and paths forward.
Mm, you can be a trailblazer. I feel like there's such few women and people of color in data, period. And one of my favorite educators and creators is a woman. She has, I think her handle is Miss Excel, and she makes these like little videos on doing something really tactical, really, really tactical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like creating a summary, or just like a really fast way of doing some data cleanup.
Right.
And yeah, and there is something about the fact that she's a woman and she's making something so accessible that makes me go back again and again and again. And I suspect that you're also a really good teacher. And when we were chatting last week, you shared with me, you were like, I want to create this course, right? Where people can just learn like how to get up and running with Power BI, which is, by the way, like it's an amazing tool. In fact, I wish I used it more, so I might take this class. Will you tell us a little bit about what you're thinking and who should take it? What skills do I need to sit through 6 hours of a Power BI crash course?
Sure. So how this came about was just through regular dealings with my customers, and also with a lot of the training that I do for whether it's for nonprofits or for corporate. I found a common thread where there were a lot of users who had, let's say, Excel skills. They have skills in Microsoft Excel, and they just didn't know how to transition that over, or how to transition that over into Power BI. So just over the last, I would say, 5 months or so, I've put together just some notes that I've gathered over time, and designed, and I'm still in the process of completing it, designing a masterclass that is going to address, one, how do you transition from Excel to Power BI? And also, if you've never engaged with any business intelligence software solution, what is the intro? What does that look like practically, and how is that going to help me to bring my data to life? So I've designed a sort of a two-pronged masterclass. The first one is a 5-hour masterclass, and really what it does is it covers end-to-end Power BI, and we look at different scenarios, different data sets, different types, different industries, to show you from start to finish, how do you fetch data, how do you mash up data, model data, and how do you visualize it as well. So this can be for anybody who maybe is an Excel user, but not really too privy to Power BI. This is a great course for those individuals, as well as someone who just wants to know a little bit more about how they can use Power BI in their day-to-day as well. And then I have a second masterclass, which is an extension of the 5-hour. It's the 8-hour one, and really what that one does, it focuses primarily on data visualization. So how do you
Mm.
tell your data story, right? It's one thing when you see the ones and zeros, but then how can you you take that information to put it into visuals, using best practices and principles, to showcase that to your report consumers in an effective way, right? So we're going to do a lot of focusing on data visualization for that 8-hour course. So those are the two courses, and I'm looking to release them in spring, around early April. They should be ready, and yeah.
Yeah. So it could be, you don't have to have data in your job title to come to these courses, right?
Not at all.
You could be another entrepreneur. Maybe you want to learn how to do better sort of client services. And you could come, or you work in a nonprofit organization, so you're wearing likely many different hats. Right? Is there like some
Yeah.
basic prerequisites? Do people need to know how to use Excel? Well,
Uh,
I
I
think
would say,
everybody knows how to use Excel,
yeah,
but not
I
always
would say
well.
it would help, but it certainly isn't a prerequisite, and this is industry agnostic as well, right? So the goal again is, my sort of passion and desire is to educate people, about using these tools that you can use data. I mean, data is the coin of the realm in our in our modern workspace and society. So it's important to know how to interact with it in an efficient way, right? So I would say there really isn't any prerequisite. It could be for people who are just kicking the tires and just want to know what this thing is all about. This is going to be a great opportunity to showcase that as well.
Okay. I'm gonna be there. I feel like I need this. So, speaking of data, and we've been talking a little bit about entrepreneurship, one of the things that is true in the United States, and I imagine that it is true in Canada as well, which is that Black women are the largest segment of small business owners in the country. Right? That's been true, year on year. More new businesses are started by Black women and Black people generally in the United States than any other racial or ethnic group. And at the same time, they're the least likely to hit six figures in annual revenue and the least likely to ever hit $1 million in the lifetime of their business, which is wild,
Mm,
right? The largest segment of business owners and the least likely to hit what I would say is a living wage, six figures in most cities in the United States. Like you need to make close to $100,000 a year. And so I do think that for entrepreneurs, data skills can help you also grow your business because you're looking at how you drive revenue differently. Right?
absolutely. Yeah, and just on that note, it's the statistics also are very similar here in Canada as well, especially in the heavily populous cities such as Montreal, and Toronto, and Vancouver, etc. And this is the advantage, right? Is to how can you leverage your data? Like I said. No matter what you're doing, there is data behind everything that you do. It's just the way, again, it's what governs our world right now, right? So being able to understand your information, again, it will help you to make those business decisions with a lot more confidence because it's backed by qualitative and quantitative data. And that's something that I herald from the mountaintops all the time, is understand your data. All right. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to do so. You just need to be able to take some very simple concepts and apply them. And it will do wonders for how you govern, manage, and plan all your strategies, whether it is for a non-for-profit or a for-profit business. So whether you are in the BIPOC space and you're trying to figure out, well, how can I get a cutting edge or a lead within my industry? It's know your data, understand your data. Again, you don't have to be a data practitioner, but I think in this modern society and in modern workspace, you have to be able to understand your data.
Mm, I herald it from the mountaintops all the time. I think just put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I like that.
Um, you're like, I'm a data evangelist. What's really my job is I'm a data evangelist. All right. Well, I want to wrap our conversation with asking you about what's some of the ahas have been? You've been an entrepreneur now for 2 years, and um, you're working with a lot of different kinds of companies. You're not just working for one company. What have been some of the ahas? In what ways has having a practitioner like you changed how they work? What choices are they making today that they weren't making before you joined them? What have been some of your biggest ahas?
I would say it's really just educating, especially a lot of folks in the senior executive level, being able to see how you can take your information and really be resourceful and have really good strategic planning behind that. I think the aha is really to understand for them. What I've seen through a lot of the clients that I've worked with is that they thought it was complicated, right? They thought it was
Mm,
very complicated and complex. But my methodology that I take in the practice that I do, it's really working collaboratively with them, getting to understand their environments. And we do a lot of storyboarding, right? And sort of looking at the profile. So we have an ideal situation, and then we then just map the data on top of that. And for me, nothing brings me much joy when you do see them with the bulb in their minds. It's just like, oh my goodness, I start to see the correlations. I start to see, and for me, that's where it's just like that is a success moment. That is a win right there. Because when they go offline now, they're doing additional work, behind the scenes, and coming back to a lot of our one-on-one sessions and saying, I thought about this or I thought about that, and you see the wheels turning. So for me, the aha moment is that you can, for the lack of a better term, convert those that might think that data is this very difficult thing, especially when you're looking at a lot of it all at once. But if you can segment it, and we take a very simplistic approach to it, you start to see that there is a lot of good reception, and the synapses start to fire off, and they start to say, I can do this, and I can do that, and I can do that. And it's almost like watching somebody just discover something new. So I think that for me is what really keeps me going within my practice, and seeing people grow from being afraid of using Excel, for example, to now that curiosity and wanting to learn more, wanting to go deeper into various elements.
mm, yeah. People being afraid of Excel, I think that's very real. That's very real. And a lot of people that I've had on as guests for Data is Love have talked about actually being terrified of math
Yeah.
when they were younger. Um,
Here, I just said it's the same thing for me. I ran away from this thing, right? But
yeah,
sometimes teachers have a lot to do with it, right? I'm pretty sure some people may have had good teachers and bad teachers, and it's just the way that it's conveyed. Because we're not all the same learners. We don't all learn the same. And so you need to have a different approach for your learning style. And that's what I try to hit. I try not to paint everybody with a broad brush. It's, how do you learn? How do you
yeah,
understand the world? And from there, we try to build on that and utilize that to our advantage.
yeah. The other thing that I wanted to share with you last week, I had a guest on Holly Bregman, who is deep in, like PhD, people analytics. And I asked her, I said, well, like if you're gonna hire your first DEI data practitioner, what skills do they need? And her answer really surprised me. She actually said that it doesn't matter if they, know how to do a regression analysis. It matters more that they know how to ask questions and see through the sea of data. Can they make connections? Can they
Absolutely.
come up with a really great hypothesis that's worth testing? Because a lot of the technical work, well, there are people that you can direct on the technical work, but can you
Precisely.
set it up? Yeah.
Yeah, no, and
Um,
that is right there. The actual principle, right? It's, are you able to tell a coherent story with what's in front of you? And I can say timeless. Whenever I was doing interviews for analysts, it's, how good of a storyteller are you, right? Can you use this data and tell the story? And I think those soft skills are valuable. Like you said, the technical piece you can always learn, or you can always get assistance with that. But it's being able to rightly divide the information, if you will.
all right, we're calling all theater majors, journalists, come work with Shannon, learn how to do this, build a language. Shannon, thank you so, so much for your candor. I think for this really courageous journey that you're on, but also making something that just feels kind of gnarly and crunchy and hard, like Power BI, really accessible for a whole new world of learners.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, folks, please take a moment, find him on LinkedIn, send a connection request. We will pop a link to his email if you're interested in learning with him. I highly, highly, highly recommend. 5 hours goes by really fast. It goes by really, really fast. And at the end of it, you're going to be a better storyteller. You're going to be a better storyteller. You're going to have some skills to do that. So take a moment to connect with him. Shannon, thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. And to everybody else, have a great week ahead. And we'll be back next week talking more data and storytelling. Thank you.
Thank you.